Welcome
There we
to
go.
the New Author Podcast, a weekly podcast diary starring Jerry Evanoff
You don't see enough positive news about global warming.
and Rich Kacy.
I usually do the smell test and the taste test. I usually don't do the look test too much, but sometimes, like if there's furry things growing on it.
Join them weekly as they talk about writing, publishing, and marketing their books. They'll talk about their successes, their failures, and everything in between. And along the way, they'll probably veer off the path a little and talk about gardening, television, their world travels, sports, or pretty much any other shiny thing that catches their eye. And now, here are your hosts.
Really is a long intro, isn't it, Rich?
It is a little bit. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Author Podcast. I am one of the hosts of this podcast, Jerry Evanoff, and with me, as he is each week, is Rich Kacy. And Rich, you mentioned the weather just before we started recording, and I promised you that I would do my best to not complain about our weather this week, but you feel free to talk about yours if you want.
No, I don't need to talk about mine. It's going to be cold, but not compared to yours, so I've got nothing to complain about. But you can tell kind of what my frame of mind is after 7 days in a row of working at the library. I'm kind of a little bit loopy, as evidenced by the fact that I just licked my pop screen. So,
Boy, the people that are only on audio right now don't know what that means. And oof. All right. All right. Well, let me just jump right into my stats. Let's just get right into this because it's been an interesting week as an author, good stuff, and as a non-author, I'm just miserable with this weather. And I promised I wouldn't complain, and I almost made it 15 seconds. It's just I'm so miserable, Rich. I just can't get over it. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna do what I do every couple of weeks here. If there's any new listeners out there, I published book 1 in a murder mystery series back in May of 2023, and then as I was writing book 2, I decided I wanted to write the next 8 to give me 9 total, along with a prequel novella to give away before I even publish the next one. So as of right now, I have books 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. I have the first drafts written. I have a prequel novella written, and I'm currently working on plotting book 6 in the series. My goal last week was to get past the midpoint, which was chapter 12. But surprising everybody, including myself, I actually finished the entire plot. The last 2 days have been fantastic, and I'll talk about why. But they have been amazing in terms of plotting. I actually, at the same time that I finished the plotting, I also wrote in 2 different chapters first draft words this week. So my total for book 6, which I just finished plotting today, but my total is actually my total for the year is up 2,574 to a total of 11,724, which is getting me closer to the 145,000 I wanted to hit for the year, which I knew I wouldn't start, early because I was going to do a lot of editing and still plotting. But every now and then I get to write a couple of chapters, and it adds to my total. My words per hour for the year dropped down a little bit to 1,314.8, which is still significantly higher than last year ended. But as I begin writing book 6, which I will probably start doing that tomorrow, I know that the words per hour will drop a little bit because then I'll have a bigger sample size to go from. But overall, fantastic week in terms of not only writing 2 of the chapters. I wrote chapter 1 and chapter 9. I don't know why I went to 9, but I did. And then I actually plotted the entire plot. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, very nice. For those who are not up or new to what I'm doing, excuse me, I started a romance series in December. Finished the first book in the first week of January, I believe. As I'll talk about a little bit later, it's going to be at the moment a 4-book series in 2025 is what I'm planning. I've kind of updated my plans a little bit for 2025. But I didn't do any additional editing on that first romance book this past week, but I did finish the first draft of the second romance book. I had 10,284 words over 5 days of writing this week, so a little bit over 2,000 words a day. And this one stands on first draft at 53,714 words and 29 chapters. I imagine, like the first book, it's going to expand a little bit as I get into the editing phase and I start filling in some more emotional details of the interactions between the protagonists. And I guess I don't really have, well, you do have antagonists in romance, but it's a little bit different than a typical story. But I expect that to expand a little bit. I did also start noodling around a little bit with some ideas for the third book in the series, but I promised myself I would not start that until finishing book number 1 in terms of the editing of it. And I'll talk a little bit more about what's going to happen maybe after I finish editing or doing the second draft of that first
Can,
book.
can I get some odds on you not following through with that? Because
Yeah, I think
things.
I'm actually going to mention it later.
Yeah.
It was another slow week on the blue sky on the social media front because I just didn't post much this week. I think I posted a couple of times and that's all. I did pick up 5 additional people, not counting bots, which you tend to attract a lot of for some reason. I currently have 280 followers, real people followers, or as best as I can tell. So it's still moving up and got a long way to go for this year to hit 1,500. But I'll just keep plugging away at it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. So getting into my recap for the previous week, we actually podcasted 9 days ago as we moved from Friday to Sunday. So I'll start with Saturday morning last week. Went into Chick-fil-A and I began plotting chapter 9. This was kind of an interrogation scene with my main character and a suspect. And I remember you saying last week, and I hadn't really thought of it in those terms before, but you saying last week that because I'm putting so many words into my plot, I'm damn near writing a first draft anyway.
Right.
So I got about halfway through this. I was writing a lot of dialogue, and I realized, yeah, I'm kind of writing a first draft here, even though it looks like I'm plotting. I'm actually writing the first draft. So I just decided to just write it. So I went back to the very beginning of it and just started writing it. Over about 90 minutes, I wrote 1,541 words. And then I worked on getting ideas for chapters 10 and 11, which led into chapter 12. That was the midpoint that I had already plotted the end of. I already knew what was going to happen at the end of it. So as I worked on getting ideas for 10 and 11, I started also working on the beginning of 12 to get to that ending point. Let's see. This is my midpoint is chapter 12, where the character that Sam is actually interrogating in chapter 9, that's the character who ends up dead. So it's kind of interesting to write that knowing 3 chapters later they were going to find him with a knife in him. And I didn't get.
What's determining the midpoint? I mean, what happens there?
That's where the guy that my character is interrogating Sam is interrogating in chapter 9. He's gonna start looking like a suspect, and they're gonna find him dead in chapter 12. Okay. So chapter 12 is gonna be the midpoint where they find him dead. Yeah. And I didn't get as far as I wanted to, since we had, and I know, Rich, I know this is going to surprise you when I say it, another ice storm coming later in the day, which I believe was our second one in 3 days. At one point while I was at Chick-fil-A, early on, I installed the Grammarly app. I had talked about how, the Novel Crafter UI didn't have any kind of a spell checker in it. So then I would paste my chapter into Grammarly, and there'd be like 50 edits with like 25 of them being misspellings just when I was typing. I didn't notice that I typed, I have a tendency to type the TEH. I type a lot of, I think I'm a little dyslexic when I type. I type a lot of words backwards as I'm typing. There could be a 4-letter word and I'll type it completely backwards without even flinching.
You have some fingers that are faster than others.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. So then I installed Grammarly and it works fantastic. It was really good. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So I was very happy about that because I was able to correct those things as I went. And then Saturday, I don't remember what I did Saturday in the evening, probably just watched the ice storm. Sunday, I did nothing. The ice storm that came Saturday, and I basically coated everything with ice, and I wasn't going to get up and drive or go anywhere because I had no idea what the roads were like. I didn't feel like going anywhere. I didn't go to the grocery store. I literally didn't leave my house. I just played my football game a couple of times and watched TV until it was time for the Super Bowl. And then I watched that, and really when I say I watched that, I had it on the little TV muted the whole time, and I was just watching YouTube because I just didn't care. I couldn't find myself caring about Philadelphia winning. I wanted to see Kansas City lose, but in reality, I just didn't care.
It seems like it was played a month ago. That's how long ago it seems.
It really does. Yeah, it really does. Monday, I had decided Sunday night as I was going, I still stayed up till the end of it. I mean, I stayed up till like 11:30. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I just didn't want to get up at 5 a.m. and go to work the next day. So I ended up deciding that I would do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at work in the office, my 3 days in the office. And I ended up staying home Monday, got to sleep in about an hour and a half. And then at lunch, I actually headed across the street to the library again to continue plotting. I mean, it's actually working out really well. To continue plotting, I continued to work on chapter 10 and I finished it. And then I got most of the way through 11. And then Tuesday, I was in the office. The first thing I did on Tuesday morning was look at my vacation days and how many days I have left. It's around, I don't know the exact amount, it's around 18 and a half to 19. Well, then you multiply that by 2 and you get the number of half days that I have left. So I started at July 4th and just put a half a day every Friday the rest of the year, except for like obviously Black Friday's a holiday, so we get that off anyway. The week of Christmas and New Year's, I didn't take that one off because I'll probably be working from home anyway. But every other one, including the same week as Labor Day, which I get Monday off, I put Friday as a vacation day, full day, because I have a fantasy draft every year. It's like my 14th straight year in this fantasy league, and it goes late, about an hour from my house on Thursday nights. I don't get home until like 11. And the last thing I want to do is get up and work, even working from home. So I figured I'll just take a whole day that time instead of a whole day instead of a half a day. So when I was done, I still had a bunch of vacation days left. So the plan right now is to go about every third week until July 4th, taking a half a day Friday, and then have every week after that as half a day Fridays. Even when I do that, it still leaves me like 3.5 additional days that I can take whenever I want. So, and this is all based on me not going on any vacations, which I'm not planning, except for earlier today when I was looking at what it would be like to be in Aruba right now, and I started pricing that out. But I'm really not planning any vacations. So that's kind of a tentative tentative half a day Friday schedule the rest of the year, about every third week until July 4th, and then every week after that. So.
I got to tell you, you're a bad influence on me because I know in June I have to take some time off, probably 3 or 4 days. I have to fly out to Los Angeles because my son and daughter-in-law are graduating with their PhDs. But I started thinking, I wonder if I could take on these days or these weeks that have 3-day weekends. I wonder if I could take an extra day off and make them 4-day weekends. And how long would my vacation time last?
There's a guy I saw on Instagram or one of those sites a couple of weeks ago who said, if you have X amount of vacation days, here's the best way to take advantage of them. And he put like a Friday on every 3-day week, a weekend where Monday was a holiday. He had a Friday for Christmas, and he turned like his 20 vacation days into like 65 days off if you do it a certain way, which I thought was really interesting. For me, it's really good because it means I get that extra full writing session instead of like a lunchtime writing session. And you'll see when I talk about this week what that turns into, which is great. At lunch on that day on Tuesday, I continued to work through the plot of my book 6. I worked out the end of chapter 11 and the beginning of chapter 12, which then leads into the midpoint. Then I went back to the first chapter and just decided to write it for kicks. I just decided to. So I opened up. I took my plan from chapter 1. I copied it into my novel crafter chapter 1 section, began writing it, and holy cow, Grammarly is like the most intrusive thing you'll ever see. It is so frustrating. It wouldn't be so bad if it would just give me spelling errors, or if there was a way that I could like turn off everything but spelling errors. And maybe you can. I don't know. I haven't looked into this yet. But all the other stuff, like when I put actually or surely, or when I end a sentence with a preposition, just leave it alone for now. I'm writing a first draft. I wish I had a first draft mode and then a final edit mode. I'm gonna have to suggest that to them. Because all I really care about when I'm typing are the spelling mistakes. I don't care about anything else. So I ended up turning it off completely for Novel Crafter. It's off to this day. I'll turn it back on when I get back into editor mode. But right now, it's just so it's constant underlines and red lines and blue lines and so much.
Right. Well, I don't use Grammarly, and although Scrivener, which I do use to write with, does underline in red things that are wrong or it thinks it's wrong. But I have noticed that even in Pro Writing Aid, that when I start using Pro Writing Aid, that it's become a lot more intrusive. Just because they're adding more and more AI features to it, and they constantly wanting you to rephrase things or suggesting rephrasing. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, so I ended up writing 1,033 words into chapter 1. I didn't actually finish it. I think I got about 75% of the way. I didn't get to the big argument that then leads to the big murder at the end of the chapter, but I got most of the way through it. So Wednesday, I was in the office again. I'd worked on plotting some more. This time, working through the very end of the midpoint in chapter. I don't know why I have chapter 15 in there. The very end of that should probably be 15 and 16. Then plotting. So I worked through the very end of the midpoint. Then I went to chapter 15 and 16. Then I went back and plotted 13 and 14, connecting the midpoint to what happens at the end of 16, which is another key story. So that's kind of how I'm doing it. I don't know how you don't really plot, but when I plot, I generally don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. I try to work out the big story points. There's the midpoint, the pinch points, a couple other things that happen, and then I work on connecting them together. That's kind of how I've always done it, and that's what I did here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that do it that way. I vaguely remember Craig Martell suggesting that that would be a really great way for especially early writers to write their stories, because that way you not only know where you're going, but you have some signposts along the way, as opposed to people like
That's
me who just kind of flail around and just let the characters run off and do whatever they want.
yeah. I mean, that's the signpost along the way is the best way to put it right there.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I tried it once. I tried it with my book 2 of my sci-fi series to just write it without having, just like you're doing it right now, and it went so off the rails that I had to stop and actually plot because
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
I have started stories, and then by the time I'm done with them, and I'm talking like novel length stories, and by the time I'm done with them, it's completely switched genre. So,
Oh,
yeah,
jeez.
yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Where did these aliens come from?
Right.
Like,
Right. On Thursday, there was no writing on Thursday. I was back in the office, and we ended up having a lunch for our project manager who was leaving the company after I believe 13 years of being there. It's very disappointing. He's really good at what he does, and I before I worked here, I never had a project manager. I was always the project manager. I handled everything start to finish, and now having him made my programming life so much easier. And it's gonna be weird not having one. And I hope, whatever they decide, I don't think they're gonna bring anybody to replace him. I think they're gonna work out different ways to do it. Whatever they decide, I hope it's just as good because it's been really nice having a project manager. And
yeah.
he's a good guy. He runs our fantasy football league and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's disappointing that he's leaving. We had a nice lunch for him, chatted for a while, and then I did not do anything writing wise.
What you have to hope is that they're not going to come to you and say, Jerry, in addition to being a programmer, you're also a project manager.
Well, I will say, Rich, that on Tuesday, I went into the big boss's office and I said, hey, I know he's leaving and I know a lot of this stuff's getting dumped on you. If there's anything you want me to do instead of having to, you to do it, let me know because I'm happy to do it. Now, here's the thing, Rich. I don't want anything new, but it's February. We get raises early April. So I just wanted to look good. And it worked out well because he said, I think we're okay. I'm like, oh, cool. I just made the offer and was turned down. That looks great.
That's the best of all outcomes.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But Thursday night, we had a writer's club. I read chapter 1 of my prequel. I'll tell you, Rich, I started, it was 10 pages. I mean, it was like 2,500 words. I did not want to read it. I put it in the drive like 3.5 weeks ago and never looked at it since then. And then I'm looking at I whispered to Michaela at one point while others were talking, I don't want to read this. Like, I didn't think it was going to be very good. So I started reading it. I got chapter 4 and I stumbled over a couple words. And I just said, guys, I'm not doing this. This is terrible. I'm not reading it. Let me revise it and I'll come back next month. And they were all like, no, keep going. So I did. And they loved it. And it's the weirdest feeling. I don't get it. Because I thought it went on too long. I thought it took too long to get to the main part of the chapter. I just thought so many things were wrong with it. And they're all like, no, it's good. I like this. You did good early on to set it up, So I still don't know if it's good enough. I want to trust him. I really do, but I just don't trust myself with that one.
So, me being me, I would have had to look at him and say, I didn't think I could have a lower opinion of you guys, but now I do.
Yeah, that'd have been about right too. On Friday, I worked from home. Nothing writing related on this day. I ordered a new set of cards for my APBA football game that I like to play. It's the 1965 season. It's got AFL and NFL. And I feel like if I was around back then, I would have been a huge AFL fan because of the offense and the way they play. It was so much fun. There's a player for the San Diego Chargers named Lance Allworth, who I'm a big fan of, even though I've never actually seen him play. I've only seen him on highlights. And I bought the set specifically for him. But the Browns are really good that year. Johnny Unitas is in this thing. Joe Namath. There's a lot of good names in this set. And I still had 1/2 of one game left to play in my 1989 week 3 that I needed to finish before I could start playing this game. So at lunchtime, instead of going across the street to the library, I spent about 45 minutes playing the third quarter. And then right after work, I spent 45 minutes playing the final quarter to get the game over with. And then I did yet another video where I unboxed the 1965 cards. So I actually made three videos for my YouTube channel that day playing this football game. And which I'm very happy to do because I wanted to get it done so I could get to this 1965 set. I've got some of the cards for the set right here. So if you're on YouTube and you're watching, there's John Hadel of the San Diego Chargers from 1965.
How many subscribers do you have to that channel now?
Oh, I don't know, somewhere in the 30s, not a lot. But I it's a very, very small niche. I mean,
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking guys that are my age or up and I'm saying guys because it's not women, it's guys my age or up who A, like to play a dice football game when there's 9,000 video games out there, and B, are YouTube subscribers. And
right.
that's not a big, what do they call that Venn diagram? That's not a big circle there in the middle.
No,
so I'm actually interacting with people, other people whose channels I watch, which I really like. And I really like playing the game. It's a lot of fun. I was playing tonight or earlier today, and I had a blocked punt return for a touchdown, but there was a penalty that called it back. And it's just a lot of fun when you're rolling the dice and you roll, 66s, which is the best thing you can roll, and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's a blast. And I did that on Friday. And then I went to bed really early. I think I went to bed like 9:15, 9:30 on Saturday. Oh. But on Friday night. But yet somehow on Saturday, I didn't wake up till like 7. It was amazing. And I know this is going to be shocking to you. I know you're going to, I'm glad you're sitting down when I tell you that I woke up to more snow and ice, because that's what happens.
Your body could sense it. That's why you slept in so late.
Terrible. I didn't go anywhere in the morning. It was snowing a lot. The roads were terrible, but it actually switched over to rain around 11, maybe 11:30. So around 12:30, I cleaned off my sidewalk and my car, put some ice down, or put some salt down, and I went to Panera. And this was by far one of the best plotting sessions I've ever had in my life. And I'm going to give credit to one thing, and that is Claude Sonnet. I decided to kind of bite the bullet is the wrong term. I decided to use Claude Sonnet regardless of the fact that it was costing me 10 to 15 cents every time I did a chat. I didn't care. The results I were getting out of there when I would just ask for suggestions or say, what are my weaknesses here? Hey, give me some ideas. Or I would say, here's my idea. What do you think? I was able to get through chapter 16, 17, and 18. But before I did any of that, the first thing I did for about 90 minutes while sitting at this Chick-fil-A was talk with the AI about who, why, and how of my killer. I didn't know who the killer was at the time, the murderer for this book. I had no idea who it was. And I wanted to know who, why, and how. So I started throwing a ton of ideas at it. It was like a 90-minute, it felt like a conversation with a human being. Mm-hmm. Like it was the weirdest thing. Sonnet is so good.
It is. I've switched to just primarily using Sonnet for everything now. Another thing that Sonnet is really good for is if you've got a character sketch that's just kind of just the outlines of a character, and you know what their role is in the story. You don't really have any strong preference about what they look like or anything, but maybe you know what their shard of glass is or whatever. If you tell Sonnet that, okay, give them the genre, give you the genre, I'll give you the setting, and I'll give you what little I know about this character. Why don't you give me 2 or 3 fully fledged out characters and that I can choose to actually make this mine, for the story. And it does a fantastic job in terms of going into the psychology and the physical appearance and all that kind of stuff of the person. Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but when Sonnet gives me a response back, it looks better than when I get responses back from the other ones in terms of like how it's formatted. It almost sounds like a human being. And it was, I don't get to have a lot of writing conversations with actual human beings, and just sitting down and basically spitballing ideas back and forth with this thing where I would ask for 10 things. It would give me 10. I would say, well, I like 1 and 4, but let's make this change and this change. Now combine that and give me that idea. And it would summarize it for me. Okay, I like this, but let's change it to this. And by the time I was done, I had so much of my plot, not just like, chapter by chapter, but I had the who, I had a twist in terms of the murder, which was kind of my idea. I just literally watched the ABC murders about a week ago, and it's probably one of my top 5 Perot's. And in that one, the murderer uses the murder of person number 3, uses the murders of 1 and 2 to mask the real victim, which was victim number 3. And I wanted to do something similar, but I wanted to kind of turn it around a little bit, which I did. And then I had why the murder. I had a backstory of my murderer that I'll never put into the book, but now I know where this guy's coming from, and I know why he did it, and a little bit it'll make it in there, but not as much as I have. And it was, I don't know if I have to say, well, it was like 90% me, 10% AI. I really don't know what the percentage was. I really don't care, because by the time I was done just having this 90-minute conversation, I had so much So much finished of stuff that I knew I was going to have
Right.
in the first place. It was fantastic. I also deleted a couple of chapters because I had like a chapter outline where I had a paragraph based on maybe the 3-act structure of what happens in each chapter. And there were a couple chapters where like, okay, chapter 19, I have this, but I actually have that as part of my plot in 18. So I would delete 19. By the time I was done, I was down to 23 chapters at that point. I got to find where I am in the outline now because I talked so much there. By the time I left, so I was there for about 3 hours. There was not a lot of people there because of the weather. It was quiet. By the time I left around 3:30, again, I knew the who, the how, the why of the murder. I had a nice twist while Sam is solving it. And again, it's something I've been wanting to put in one of these. I want to do an ABC murder style in one of these 9 stories. I have a couple other Perot things I want to kind of take and then switch around a little bit of some of my favorite episodes in these 9 stories. So again, I had 25 at the time, and now I was down to 23. And by the time I left Saturday, I had 18 of the 23 chapters plotted, but I also had a whole background of how and why the murderer was doing, which I love. It's I think it's a great story.
You can save some of that stuff and give it out as what do they call them, cookies for
Sure.
people to sign up to your email list at the back of the book and stuff like that.
Yeah, I talked in book 1 about Sam mentions a TV show, which actually so in book 1, the one that's already published, Sam mentions an episode of a show called Behind the Lens, which is a fake show I made up on that. It's very similar to See No Evil on the ID network, or as the Murder Channel, as I like to call it, where they did this whole hour-long thing about his parents, how they died, the big conspiracy. They made his dad out to be an international spy. And I decided in this book here, book 6, that the producer of that episode is actually going to be at this convention that Sam is at and some others are at. He's actually the first victim, which is going to make Sam look like a major suspect because of a couple things that happened. And I talked about maybe making a transcript of that episode for the end of book 1, which I'll just republish with book 1. But for this one, I could easily make something about the murderers, his whole charity thing that he formed. I could easily make that some kind of a cookie at the end of that episode, or at the end of this book for that. Definitely. Then this morning I was up again, and it was still raining from the previous. It started, let's just say, precipitating Friday night, and it's just over the last 48 to 60 hours, it's just changed back and forth from rain to snow. So when I woke up on Sunday, it was still raining. But I just didn't care. I'm so tired of this terrible cold winter. We've had 2 days that I can think of above 40 since before Thanksgiving, before November. I bought my car November 16th or November 15th. We had 2 warm days, Monday and Tuesday. We've had, I think, 2 since then. And by warm, I mean, more than 40 degrees. It's been just awful. I'm miserable. I'm literally miserable.
I don't think I could take that anymore.
We have about 2 weeks left, and it looks like we're going to start getting into the 30s and 40s a little bit more. But we still have to get through these next 2 weeks. And this week, it's going to be in the teens, temperature-wise. It's going to be the negatives overnight with the wind chill. It's just.
I still remember when I went to school in Michigan State, the weather was so awful every winter that come around March, late March, middle of March, whatever, when you'd get the 1 or 2 days where it was like 45 or 50, all the girls would be out there sunbathing in their bathing suits in the snow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
because it just felt so warm compared to the way it'd been. Yeah.
Yeah. And today was just like the sitcom of my, it's like the whole, the whatever you want to call it of this winter. Today was the day that like showed how this winter's been going. So it was raining this morning. I didn't care. I knew it was going to turn to snow. I knew it said 2 to 4 inches. I'm tired. I just don't care anymore. So I went to Panera while it was still raining, started working on chapter 19 and 20. And as I'm looking out the window, just watching it turn to snow. And, I really, at this day on this plotting session, I really needed to figure out the final clue. This is the thing I struggle with the most. The final clue where Sam says, I know it was you and here's why. And I think I did a good job with it in book 1. I don't think I've done a very good job with it with all the first drafts I've written so far. That'll be something I really have to work at when I go back to edit them. But I think I have this one. I worked at it for a while. I was there for about 2.5 hours, and I worked that for most of the time. I continued working through chapter 19, and once I had that, I worked on chapter 20. My chapter 20, I'm a little bit concerned that it's too out of place for the second to last chapter in a murder mystery that's gotten kind of dark. So I'm going to try to make it as tense as I can. I have the hotel guests who can't leave. I mean, this is a total locked room type of mystery. Who can't leave because of the weather. We're up in Vermont. It's snowing like crazy. I don't know where I got that idea. And they can't leave. So the manager says, "Why don't you guys play this?" And it's kind of an adult sized Jenga game. And as Sam's watching them play, something hits him. He realizes who did it, and then based on a couple things he had seen earlier in the book or heard earlier in the book. So then so I was able to finish 19 and 20, and then 21 is just the denouement. Is that how you say that word?
Denouement, yeah.
Denouement. That's the climax of the story where he actually says, "Here's who did it, and here's who why." All I really did was take all the stuff I had worked out earlier the previous day and paste it in there because that's how the murder happens. The entire thing is so I just paste that in there with the idea of turning that into the final chapter. When I'm done, and with that, I actually finished the draft, which was nice.
Yeah.
So then I had to kind of fight my way through the snow on the way home, and that wasn't fun, but I didn't care. I got home and decided to play my football game. It got snowy and windy, and I was 45 minutes into recording when my power went out, which the funny thing about my power going out is that if it were to go out right now, we would keep recording because, well, I guess we'd lose internet. My bad. We would lose internet. So, but I wasn't on the internet when I was recording. I was using that other program. What's that thing called? OBS Studio. I just use that when I record. So it kept recording me. The microphone, it's all wireless. The computer's a laptop. Who cares if it's not plugged in? The battery's fine. So I'm literally just like, okay, well, my power just went out. So yeah, I'll be back in a minute. So then I stopped recording it there. But you can actually see it in the video, like the 53-minute mark or whatever it is. You can see all the lights just shut off around me, and it got dark around me. The power was out for a good hour and 15, hour and 20. And it came back on, thank God. And I finished playing the game, and now it was time to go get my dog. He was at my mom and dad's. Again, really bad weather. So I go outside and start scraping off my car because in that 2 or 3 hour period, my car had gotten covered with snow, and I broke my windshield wiper on my car. I literally just pulled the windshield wiper off. But I don't know anything about windshield wipers. I'm sure it slides back on, but it's 20 degrees outside, wintry, snowy, bluster. I don't want to deal with that. So I texted my mom. I'm like, can you ask the dad just to come bring Max home for me? So I just broke my windshield wiper. So he did. And I'll fix it tomorrow when it's actually going to be 20 degrees, but not snowing. I'll go over to the parts store and fix it tomorrow. So
doesn't Max ever have sleepovers?
They don't want that. Yeah. Okay. They already have their own that spends the I don't know where their own sleeps. He's tiny, but Max doesn't like to sleep like in a room by himself. So he's going to want to be on the bed. And they don't want that. Yeah. They don't want that. So anyway, that was, and then I sat and watched TV for a couple hours. I made some dinner, and now we're doing this. And after we do this, I'm going to just binge some YouTube and then go to sleep. And luckily, I'm off work tomorrow. So
or go stand at the window and grumble some more.
When I say get off my lawn, I mean the snow, and yeah, I do say it. So yeah.
All right. Well, my last Saturday and Sunday, I was off work. So I spent each of the days outside. The weather was beautiful. I'm trying to remember what the temperature was. It was at least in the 70s, may have been pushing 80. There's a lot of gardening to get done. So I did a lot of clearing of dead material that had been knocked off during the last freeze that we had. I finally cut up that big tree trunk that I've had laying in the back 40 of my yard that I cut down over a year ago. And finally got that one chopped up. Planted some peas, planted more potatoes, planted my tomato plants, and transplanted to bigger cell packs that I had in the house, pak choi that I had started from seed the previous 2 weeks ago, I guess, something like that, maybe 3 weeks ago now. So I got that transplanted. Unfortunately, all that fresh air is supposedly good for you, but it makes me sleepy as heck. So a little bit after sundown, we came in to eat, and we both went to bed early. So on both days, Saturday and Sunday. Monday, I was back to work at the library. Nothing really notable happened other than the fact that our branch manager was going to be out all week. She's new. The branch that she was coming from, they finally hired somebody to replace her. So she was going to be over there the whole week training that person. So we got to just goof off basically as much as possible. And everybody did as much as they could. Nice. I managed to find a couple of hours to write as I did each day during this past week, and knocked out 1,862 words, probably in about 2.5 hours. Not all at one time, but split up a little bit. After I got home, after dinner, I mixed up a bunch of new seed starting soil because, I'm ever the optimistic. I thought, okay, we're into spring. We will be able to be planting all the plants here pretty soon. So I happen to have topsoil, composted cow manure and perlite. So I mixed up some seed starters, and I planted a whole nother flat of kale seeds and a whole flat of romaine lettuce. Yeah, being that optimistic probably wasn't a good idea, as we'll see. Had the morning off on Tuesday. So the first thing I did was order myself new glasses from Zenni Optical. It took a surprisingly long time for me to decide what frames I wanted.
Yeah, there's so many.
There's so many, and and they've got this little simulation where they can show you what it looks like on your face. And I don't know if I was just playing with the simulation or what I was doing, but when I finally did punch the order button, it like 2 hours had gone by, and I don't know what I did in that 2 hours. So it literally took a long time. After that, I went outside and continued clearing dead plant material, and I actually got a chance to prune the dead wood out of our blueberries before they started to flower, which is good, and cut back our elderberry bushes. But then it was time to go to work. I worked at the library on Tuesday from noon to 9. But I did manage again to sneak, since the branch manager wasn't there, sneak some time away. Wrote 1,987 words during the different breaks that I had. I also spent more time on looking at the Future Fiction Academy and doing some of the courses in there. I decided to roll my subscription forward again into March. I'm actually having a lot of fun learning all the ins and outs of AI and how to use it to do different things related to your writing career. So I'm going to keep it going for at least another month. We'll see. If I keep doing this, I'll probably come to the end of the year. I will spend $1,500 or $1,600 on it, which I'm not happy to contemplate right now, but we'll see what happens. I also got a bit more specific about my goal setting for this year. When we talked at the end of December, I think it was, I didn't have anything written down. I just kind of knew roughly what I wanted to do. I actually made some goals with some dates, and I'll talk about that later. Wednesday, this day is a bit of a blur. I know we had ravening hordes of patrons coming in waves all day long. I don't know what got into them on Wednesday, but it's the way of libraries. That some days it's very quiet, some days it's very hectic, and you really can't relate it to anything. I did find a little bit of time to write, but I only managed about 1,566 words, and I think I only wrote for about an hour and a half total, so it wasn't that much. Partly because I also had to teach a 2-hour PowerPoint class in the afternoon. But it actually turned out to be a lot of fun. It was the first time I had taught in the conference. They usually teach at a bank of computers where everybody's sitting at their own computer and I'm talking them through it. They got rid of all those computers. They decided that it was wasted space because, who cares about people and computers? They turned it into a craft space instead.
It's a fad anyway. Computers are a fad.
Yeah, it's a fad. It won't last. They turned it into craft space. So I was actually in a conference room that has a humongous flat screen TV in it. So I just took my laptop there, HDMI'd it into the flat screen, and I had a lot of fun playing with that. You having it, basically covering up an entire wall of stuff. So that was kind of fun to do. And I think the people that were in the class enjoyed it too. After dinner in the evening, I started to think about engaging an editor for these romance stories, especially since I'm thinking that I should, by the middle of the year, have maybe 3, possibly 4 of them ready to go. And the first person I thought of was Paul Teague's editor, Claire Cronshaw, and mainly because he talks so highly of her, but also because I remembered from surfing her website at one point that she was very much into romance and had done a lot of romance editing. So I shot off an email to her to see what availability was like for her. Unfortunately, Thursday morning brought disappointing news in that Claire is actually booked out through November of this year. And that is a long ways away and a bit further than I really wanted to wait. I was kind of assuming that, she'd be booked up because she's pop, a lot of people use her. I thought maybe I'd be able to get in like June or something like that.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's a long, what is that, like 7 months, 8 months?
Yeah, 7 or 8 months ahead. So I'm back to square one, trying to search for an editor. I'd like to find somebody who's very experienced in the romance genre. So I'll just have to ask around. I haven't looked back at C's website to see whether she does romance or not, but I'll have to do that as well. It was another crazy day at the library as well. So my total word count was down to 1,441 for the day. but I could tell I was happy that day, even though it was kind of a lower word count, because I could tell I was basically finished with the story. I had to do, like you say, basically come up with a denouement of some form or another, which can be a little bit tricky in romance because unlike say a series of murder mysteries or whatever, it's hard to, or not maybe not so much murder mysteries, but like a series of fantasies or thrillers or something where you want to leave a little hook or a little cliffhanger at the end to get people to come into the next book. You really can't do that so much in romance because you know the next book is going to feature a different set of characters.
Yeah.
So you have to think a little bit about, okay, what characters in this first book can I then hook up together to be in the second book? At least one. I mean, you can have new people coming in as well. But anyways, I figured I'd be able to figure it out before I actually got to the end, how I was going to handle that. After dinner, back home, I did a first pass of my federal tax returns, which I like to do just to see how much or little money I'm going to owe. Turns out I won't owe anything this year. I broke almost even, so I'm very happy about that.
I actually got both of my refunds back, state and federal.
Oh wow, that's great!
So happy.
I've been very bad at estimating what my income will be over the years since I retired, since it wasn't steady income. It kind of came in spurts. And, I gotten into the habit of having to write thousands of dollars in checks to the federal government. Yeah. And I thought that would happen this year because I know I made, like $7,000 off Amazon this year. And, I had some money coming in from some other places, but it turned out that I had actually guessed right for once, which was really good. Yeah. Nice. Friday, maybe it was the taxes, maybe it was just the week was starting to drag on, working every single day. Had very low biorhythms on Friday. That often happens as I get towards the end of the 7 straight days of working. And I guess I looked like it or acted like it. Had low energy because my supervisor sent me back to the workroom for most of the afternoon.
Nice.
So I took some of that time to write, and I managed 1,818 words. And I knew I was now so close to the end that I could smell it. I knew exactly what I was going to end up, how I was going to end up the book. Saturday, I was super slow at the library. No particular reason. The weather was beautiful. Well, maybe it's because the weather was beautiful. People were outside. But I was so excited to finish romance number 2 in the first draft. I added 1,610 words and called it complete for right now. I then started using Claude to go back over the chapters to check for consistency in the way in which my characters talked and acted. This is something that, at least within the GPT that they have in the Future Fiction Academy, that you can do really easily. And I actually found a few problems. Not as bad as actually changing genres mid book or changing females to males or whatever. But right. It did became there's basically a matter of tone. People started switching how they talked in terms of what their personality was. So that'll be something that I will have to fix in the second pass on the romance number 2. After dinner, I picked up a novel entitled Jet Setters. I think I mentioned it, that I might be leading a book club at the library, and it turns out I will be. And this is a book that they're going to be discussing at their next meeting in March. So I thought, well, I should probably know what's in there if I'm going to be leading being in the group, and I'm going to have to be contributing. And I read the first, the prologue basically, and man, talk about family dysfunction. This is one of those, definitely one of those literary fiction books where everybody is so screwed up that you wonder how they made it to be adults. And so, yeah, so it's going to be, I don't know what kind of read it's going to be. I mean, the bio or the blurb talks about it being funny and sharply humorous. I don't know what that is. I guess if you like to laugh at people that are having problems, maybe who knows?
Sure.
Yeah. But I'll be getting more into it during the week, so we'll see what it's like. Today, Sunday, we had church this morning, and then the annual business meeting after it lasted forever. I finally left at noon because I had to get to work, and I was already taking some time off to be at the business meeting, but I wanted to see what was happening. And it always amazes me, you get into these church settings, and it's in particular in church settings, where you always have retired accountants in the congregation who are doing the books and stuff, but they are awful at describing what's going on in terms of the finances of the church. They just can't get words out of their mouth and can't seem to put together a coherent story. It was just driving me nuts. So I finally had to tap my wife on the shoulder and said, we got to go. I can't take it anymore. So I finally left her, got to work 3 hours late, but it was before we actually opened at 2 p.m., which is what I promised them I would do, so I was okay with that. And then after we get done recording, now I'm going to have to go back outside, and even though it's getting chilly out there, I'm going to have to schlep some bags of my plants around. I've got like 10 bags of potatoes out there planted in these grow bags that I'm going to have to move next to the house because it's going to be 35 tonight.
Ooh.
Thursday morning, it's going to be 29, and then possibly below that on Friday morning. So I got to get them back up against the house and get them tented. We have these big picture windows that look out on our backyard. So I kind of snuggle them up against the picture windows and put tack blankets to the outside of the house and weight them down with rocks on the far side of the plants. And it's like a little tent. They survived that really super cold freeze we had a few weeks back. So hopefully they'll survive this too. And then after that, going with the cold motif, I'm going to have a big bowl of frozen cherries and hit the sack. Nice. That's been my week.
I got to say, I'm looking back here and I'm seeing 1800, 1900, 1600, 1400, 1800 and 1600. And I just got to say that job is the best thing that's happened to your writing career.
It really has. It's because there's a limited number of things you can do, and I've pretty much done them all at the library. And there's always ongoing things, but they're not that difficult to do. But you actually have to have physical bodies there to handle the patrons when they do come. And that's, I think I've mentioned before, that most of the other people I work with, they do silly things like make puzzles on the computer. There's actually sites you can go to and make puzzles on the computer, like the kind that you would have on a table. A lot of people just, I walk by their workstations where they're at, and every time I go by, they're on Temu or Amazon or something shopping. And so I figure, well, if they're doing that, why can't I write?
Right.
So that's what I do.
And that was my whole thing about going into work 3 days a week instead of 2, even though I only have to go 2. But I go in 3. I never ever complain about it because it was my decision. And it's because at lunch, there's not much to do except sit for an hour. I might as well write because there's nothing else. I'm not going to work.
Right.
So, and that was the whole thing. It's funny how you almost trap yourself into making it so that writing is one of the few things you can do. And since you're doing it, why not?
And it's so much easier. And you've had this experience too. It's so much easier than writing at home. For me, if I try to write at home, there's always something that needs to be done. And my wife is around and she's always willing to tell me what needs to be done. And I feel guilty about not doing it when I know it needs to be done. So if I'm not here, I can't do it. So I might as well write.
Right. Yeah.
And that's it for me. I don't have anything new on my future list of things to do except what's been on there.
Yeah, I don't have anything new either. I just have I'm still kicking around the idea of this Instagram style ad that I want to do at some point. Every now and then I run into those and I'm scrolling through the reels and it catches me by surprise about, 6 or 7, 8, maybe 10 seconds. And when I realize it's actually an ad for a book and not something else. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I really want to do something that catches people's attention like that. And, every now and then I'm like, maybe I should click on it. And I usually don't, but hopefully people would actually click on mine. So, and I have that. And then I want to do the drawings for each book, and I'll get to that once I have something ready to publish. And in terms of my Addicted To, I don't really have anything this week. I can mention a few things. Number one is it's something that I watch on YouTube a lot lately. It's the Twin Tour Golf channel. And it's these twin brothers who are probably in their 20s they play putt-putt. Or mini golf, and they turned it into this big thing with them and their friends where they've got like tournaments, and then there's a final tournament, an end of the Masters tournament, whatever, and people actually donate money to them. And so the final tournament winner could be like $300 because they donated $500 to him or whatever. And I used to see him on Instagram, or I would see him on YouTube and never really pay attention. But then one day I watched, I'm like, this is kind of interesting. So now I watch every video that comes up, and they do new ones almost every day, and they're fun. I watched one earlier today, their newest one that came out. That I have people I root for and people I don't like. It's like sports. It's I don't have football right now, so it's taken one of my sports right now that I can have a fan favorite and somebody I root against. So
it's just taking the spot of the Gels marble run.
Oh, until the I think the sand rally should be coming up soon. That's one of my favorites. So yeah, absolutely.
My addicted to for the third week running, maybe the fourth week running, is fried apples and ice cream. I don't know how I haven't gained 10 pounds with how much of that I've eaten, but I haven't. In fact, I've actually lost weight. So maybe it's a new diet fad. Who knows?
All right, coming up for me this week, and it looks like I'm actually going to have 7 writing sessions this week, with 4 of them being non-work lunch breaks, which means I should be able to get a lot done. I'm going to go ahead and start working on book 6. I'm going to start writing the first draft now. This is all, of course, if Mother Nature actually allows me to do what I want. She's been a jerk all winter. I don't expect her attitude to change anytime soon. So we do have certain days this week where I have to kind of monitor, including tomorrow, to see whether I'm going to be able to leave the house. Tomorrow is a holiday. It's President's Day here, and I'm off work. I will be treating it like a Saturday, which means I'm going to write in the morning, probably go to Chick-fil-A, and I'll go ahead and start book 6, chapter 1. I know I've already worked on chapter 1. I have like 75% of it done. It will need some changes based on the plotting that I did yesterday and today, and then I'll finish it and I'll move on to chapter 2. I'll get home. I may stop at the grocery store. We'll see. I did yesterday and didn't buy a lot, but we'll see if I need anything else. And then, probably play my football game and clean the house and do some laundry and just get ready for going back to work on Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, I'm in the office all 3 days, and I will write at lunch all 3 days. Again, it's supposed to be freezing cold and it's supposed to snow. We're going to get down in the single digits. So, if the road is icy, then I will not drive to work. So we will see what happens there. But there's a pretty good chance that if I stay home one of those days, I'll go over to the library. I'm actually, now that I've done that a few times, I actually enjoy it. I get something done, and it's better than just sitting here watching TV for an hour while I eat my lunch. So
all the cool kids go to the library.
That's right. Friday, I'm actually working from home, but it's only a half a day. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to do every third week. Well, this is one of those weeks, except I decided to do a half a day the following week too. So the next 2 weeks I have a half a day on Friday. Then it starts every third week after that. But I'll have a half a day this week. So that means I will work until 11 a.m. and then I will go somewhere to write. Most likely BW3, which is I've been enjoying doing that on my half day Fridays. Saturday I'll do Chick-fil-A in the morning and continue to write. And I'll come home after and just do whatever I do on Saturdays. Sundays, Panera in the morning, grocery store, and then home. And we will podcast in the evening. And in terms of my goal, and again, I'm back to just doing math now for my goal, because I have 7 days of writing with 4 of them as non-work days, where I try to get at least 1,500 words, and 3 of them as work lunch days, where I try to get 1,000 words. That actually equals 9,000 words, which is a whole bunch of words for me in 1 week. But the math does say that I can do it, and you always trust the math. So that my 9,000 words will be my goal, and we'll see how I can do in terms of reaching that and hopefully surpassing it. We'll see.
Yeah, I bet you can do that. You've done 13,000 word weeks before. I recall that.
I've had a couple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The coming week for me, I do have tomorrow off, but not because we have it as a holiday, which we don't, but because I work today on Sunday. So I get Mondays off. It'll be spent outdoors. It's going to be nippy. It'll be for us. It's going to be in the 50s. But at least part of that time, I'm going to be covering up some plants that might get a little bit hit if we do get temperatures in the high 20s like they're currently predicting. Because I planted my tomato plants a week ago, Tammy already had to dig them back up and put them in pots and bring them indoors, because they would just be killed stone dead by temperatures in the 20s. And they look so beautiful. They're like 18 inches tall, and they were probably thinking about setting out flowers already. So we're going to get those. I already mentioned bring the potatoes in by the window to protect them from the cold. My kale and peas, which are outdoors, should be fine. They're pretty cold hardy. In fact, in past years when I lived up north, I would grow kale and it would get snowed on and everything, and they would be just fine. So I'm not going to worry about them so much. Tuesday through Thursday, I will be working each day at the library. But now that I have 2 first drafts in the hopper, I'd really like to finish editing romance number 1 before I start developing anything new. But as you suggested earlier, whether I'll actually stick to that plan totally depends on my muse, which I tend to follow slavishly. So if she comes up with something that is just so enticing that I have to go after it, I might do that. But I'm not going to encourage her at all. And she might need a break, actually. I've been writing first draft words pretty consistently since the beginning of December, and she probably needs a day off or a week off. Hopefully I'll finalize my taxes Tuesday morning before I actually go to work and get those sent off, so I don't have to worry about that. Friday and Sunday next week, or Friday through Sunday next week, are my days off. I have a long weekend, so maybe not much writing or editing. I don't really know. It depends on what the weather's going to be like. If it's really nice, I'll probably feel responsible to get stuff down outside and get some of these little plants I have in the house under lights, get them in the ground. If it's not so nice, if it's really cold or if it's rainy, which it might be, then possibly I'll get some editing done. So I don't really have any big editing goals for the week other than to keep pushing forward. If I get through a few chapters, I'd be happy with the week. So we'll see what the week brings. In terms of stuff to share, as I mentioned, I did do some adjustments, or actually put down finally in concrete terms my writing goals for 2025, the minimum goals anyways. And as you recall, I had an initial goal to write 200,000 new words. I'm at 58,000 words right now. So I'm in pretty good shape with that particular goal, especially since I picked it with no particular reason in mind. Tentatively, I'm planning on bumping that up to 250,000 words. I haven't pulled the trigger yet in my spreadsheet and actually put that 250,000 in there. But if I have 4 full novels that look like they're going to be somewhere in the 60 to 70K range, then we're talking at least 250,000 words. So we'll see what happens. But I do have a schedule now that I'm going to try really hard this year to hit, because I really want to feel like I've actually done something successfully for once in this writing business. So in terms of first drafts, my romance number 1, that's already completed. Romance number 2, I finished that. Romance number 3, first draft, I would like to have that done by March 31st. This requires me to have the editing of romance number 1 done by March 31st or earlier, and probably much earlier. So although I have it here on the schedule for a second draft that romance 1 would be finished by March 31st, I'm thinking more like the beginning of March on that one, if I could push it out over the next couple of weeks and get it finished. Romance number 4, I'm going to target the end of May for getting that one actually finished. And then I'm thinking tentatively about doing a novella, just a very short novella, maybe not even a novella, maybe technically a short story, to use as a cookie or a loss leader, whatever you want to call it, and try to get that finished by mid-June. So we'll see what happens. In terms of the editing goals, like I said, romance number 1, March 31st. Romance number 2, by May 15th, finish the second draft. Romance number 3, try to finish this second draft by July 1st. And romance number 4, finish that by September 15th. And the novella, get that done by the mid-October at the very latest. Because what I'm tentatively thinking about doing is dropping all of this in mid to late October in time for the Christmas rush.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens with all that.
Any idea where? You thought about it yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure what I am going to do is drop first in KU for a certain period of time. Probably if I do get them out in October, then I probably will be looking. Well, actually, even if it's after Christmas, by the time they all get out, probably do it for 6 months in KU and then start going wide. I think my plan is for everything I do that actually makes it to the publishing stage, drop it in KU, see if I have any success there, but then eventually go wide and immediately go wide with all the print books. So,
yeah.
Marketing goals doesn't make any sense right now for me to think about that until I have something to market. And social media, I've already mentioned earlier that I'm looking at trying to get about 1,500 followers by the end of the year. We'll see what that looks like by mid-year and see if I have any chance of getting that or not. I do have to post more if I hope to get that, which I haven't done yet. probably posting every day. What I really should do, I do have a subscription to Buffer, which is a scheduler, and I should probably go ahead and actually just spend a weekend or something putting together a bunch of posts, get them scheduled out. And what, Blue Sky is a lot like Twitter was, probably still is, in that people are in and out of there all the time, and once stuff goes past deep enough into their timeline, they never see it. So it's probably going to be helpful if I post multiple times a day. Oof. Not necessarily with all the same stuff, but to repeat stuff during the week at different times, right, just to see if everybody get a chance for everybody to see it. That's actually both part of my followers and also those are kind of related to my followers, because it's a little bit different. The way Blue Sky, I love it because it's very customizable and you can really curate your feed. On the other hand, because you can really curate your feed, it's very difficult to break into a lot of people's timelines. They have to be willing to click over one tab on their header to go from following to discover or friends of friends kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, that was a long-winded way to say I need to do more work on it.
I am kicking around the idea of looking at Facebook again. Every now and then I go look at my author page, and I got a new subscriber yesterday for no reason at all. I haven't posted in almost a year. But I do kick around the idea of going back. Every now and then I'll think of something, that'd make a good Facebook post. Nah, I don't want to get back into that. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if I started not even every day, just every now and then. I almost treat it like I treated Facebook when I first got it, 15, 20 years ago, where if something funny popped into my head, I'd go post it there and people would like it and laugh, and I'd be happy because that's the only reason I would post it. Right. Instead of trying to worry about marketing or almost use it as if it was my personal Facebook. I'm kicking that around, so we'll see. Yeah. You have a financial goal in here?
Oh yeah, well, I do have a HELOC still on the house. I want to try to get rid of that by the end of the year as well. It's not that big. It's like, I don't know, $20,000 or something like that. So okay, try to pay that off. And there's also a really small car loan, like $2,000 that we have to finish paying that off. Try to get all that done by the end of the year, just so at some point, not at some point, this coming summer, both my son and my daughter-in-law are moving to Michigan, and it won't be long that they're there that I'll start getting pressure from my mom, certainly, and maybe from my wife to actually move up there. So,
Rich, I can tell you right now, don't do it. I can tell you right now, just don't. I mean, if you're worried that it's a little chilly because it's 50 degrees, just don't. I mean, you grew up here. I don't have to tell you what it's like. Yeah. It's so miserable. I don't have anything to share this week. I'm kicking around the idea, and I literally had just started this in the last 10 minutes, of taking my chat log from yesterday that I had with Sonnet when I was going through, and it's a good 40 or 50 chats back and forth. It's a lot back and forth. It might be more than that. And posting it maybe on the Patreon if people wanted to read through it and just see how I did it. It would spoil the story, definitely, but if people would be curious to know what I was typing and the response I was getting, why I was so happy with it, I think I may post it up there and on the Patreon, just for people who might want to go see it. So that's something I might do tomorrow. So maybe give it a couple days and then check out the Patreon for that. So
I wonder if you could take that and turn it text to speech and have it like two people actually talking to each other.
Well, remember that fake podcast you made?
Yeah.
I wonder if you could use something like that. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they would follow a script, but I know you could use like 11 labs or something to pick two different people and just have them.
Really got to kick it. So if it's all snowy and icy in the morning when I wake up, I know what I'll be doing.
Yeah,
for a couple hours. Yeah, right. I know what I'll be doing. So, So anyway, that was that's really all I had. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right, that's going to be the end of the podcast this week. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email me, Jerry@jerryevanoff.com. The website is jerryevanoff.com. We are on Spotify, or we're on all your favorite podcasting apps. You can go search it there and subscribe to it. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/@newauthorpodcast. If you're listening and you want to see some of this stuff, you want to see our faces, anything else we show on the screen here, you can go there and subscribe there and watch us. And then, like I said, patreon.com/newauthorpodcast. I'm going to take a look at doing that tomorrow and getting something up there that just shows I have no idea in Novelcrafter if it's easy to export an entire chat. I got to think it's possible. That program does everything else that you could possibly think of. So I got to think it's possible. But if I can come up with something, I'll get it up there tomorrow and I don't know, drop something somewhere to let people know that it's there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about the GPT of the Future Fiction Academy. Which is called Rexy. It auto saves everything to Notion, so you just get once you've done it, you've got a copy of it. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to get in touch with me, my email address is rich@richkacy.com, and the only other place I can be found other than here every week is on Blue Sky at Kacy himself.
All right, everyone, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Yeah, take care, everybody.